Right. Well, thank you everybody for joining our Shake Off Those Interview Nerves, and how to stay calm, cool, and confident in your next job interview. Now, it's so scary. We don't interview every single day. It's so important to, prepare so that you're confident when you go into that interview. And so we thought we'd put together a little, tips and tricks for you so that we kind of help you understand, how to look at, your best traits and the best things about yourself so that when you're preparing for the interview, you don't forget those things, your special sauce. So right. Let me kind of tell you a little bit about Arkansas Center for Data Science. We are a nonprofit. Um, we partner with companies large and small across all industries, and it doesn't matter if it's a specific IT type industry or not, because they're going to have an IT department. So we partner with all of them. So if you happen to know somebody that's looking, make sure you shout out and let us know. Um, we're leading the charge to fill IT jobs here in Arkansas. I think of all the apprenticeships in the state of, actually, for IT apprenticeships, I think in the United States, we're leading the charge in filling apprenticeships in the IT space. So that's a little bit about us being a nonprofit, and happy to share more information if you're interested to hear more about that. I'm Jenny Sales. I am a talent recruiter, um, career coach, jack of all trades, um, master of none. No, not true. Um, been in the industry for about 25 years and came to work for this nonprofit mainly because of helping others. I think it's important for me to give back to the community in some way, to the knowledge that I have to share why, and how you can help yourself to become in a different career. So that's kind of why I chose to come to work for ACDS. And Kristen, I'll let you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about you and the areas that you work in.
Well, sure. Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday, I think. I'm always thrown off. We were off President's Day this week, so it always confuses me on what day it is. But it is so glad to have, or we're so glad to have everybody here. I am Kristen, and I work with Jenny on our talent team. I currently manage our work-based learning and internship program. Might have some familiar faces. I think we've got a current intern in the crowd, so shout out to Tima. And if anybody else is interested in potentially being an intern, you were in the right place. Keep listening and let us know in the chat. But like Jenny said, we're on our talent team here, and I actually came from the corporate IT world myself. I was a math major who had a great life plan until I was about to graduate college, and then decided I did not want to follow that anymore, and got lucky and stumbled into IT. Learned how to be a programmer, kind of through a similar type apprenticeship program myself almost 10 years ago now, and then found my way into the people business. I am more of a people person than sit in the corner and just code all day by myself kind of person. But I love that balance, and I love that that's, again, our mission at ACBS is kind of combining those worlds of technology and people. So we're excited to share all of our tips and tricks from the many people we have talked to, coached, hired, recruited over the last 30 plus years together, the two of us. Can't wait to see what we learn and talk about together today. Thanks again for joining, guys.
All right. Do you have a special sauce? You do. Each one of us has our own little special sauce. Strengths that you've developed from previous positions that kind of contributes to that special sauce. It's important to find your special sauce so that when you're interviewing, you make sure that that piece of the puzzle is in there. I can jump in and talk to anybody. It doesn't matter if I'm in a football game or if I'm sitting in a hallway or if I'm climbing a ladder. No matter where I am in the world, I am always able to speak to anybody. That's kind of my special sauce. If I can help somebody, that's what I want to do. And so learned how to apply that to this job to help myself further my career in an area that, kind of combine those skills. So I want to help you do that as well. Strengthen your positions, or strengthen your, oh goodness, it must be one of those days. It is a Monday on a Tuesday, and so I am spellbound. One thing I want to help you understand is, how to apply for the role you've been interviewing for. Simple steps to prepare you to do your best. Ace your interview in confidence. Um, Embrace your experience. Ditch the title. It's not just about a title. It's more about what you know, volunteer work that you've done, projects that you've completed, experiences you've had in the past, and then formulating all of that into who you are for your resume and your interview. When you're building your resume or when you're working on your interview, preparing for it, because that's really a big part of it, make sure that you list your experiences that way before you get to that point. Start with a notepad, run around. I carry a notepad like at my desk right next to it. Not only in my phone do I use my notes, but on my desk I carry a notepad. I am a notepad queen. List out your experiences in life. What have you done in the past that relates to this job that you so want? Think about everything from volunteering work to previous kind of careers and positions that you've done in a career. Like if worked, let's say you worked in the aviation industry and you were always the go-to, hey Jenny, I need to get my printer fixed, or hey, I need somebody to help me get this network up and running, or hey, I need help with analyzing this data. But your title didn't say that you did that. Maybe your title said that you were operations, or maybe your title said that you were in HR. It's okay. Those skills still apply. So list those out. Build, before you start talking to your interviewer, make sure that you are aware of what skills match. On your resume, make sure you list those experiences. Your education, your additional courses and boot camps, all of those blend into who you are today. You completed a project, when you were doing school or when you were at work and somebody came to you and said, hey, I know that you were, in operations, but I know that you're an Excel guru and I need a database built on these products. And you did that. That is some analyst work. If you cleaned it and you organized it and you were able to tell a story with that, bring that to the table. So make that list. Make sure you understand all of those things that you've done in the past and how they relate to the position you've applied for and the position that you're shooting for. When you're looking at that job description, does it match? If it doesn't, take a big look at your experiences, that list that you just made, that job description, read it, reread it, make sure you understand what's on that list, make sure it matches somehow, tie it back together so that when you're in that interview, you can kind of elaborate on those skills and the times that you've used those experiences to help another company or volunteer position. What is your special sauce? I always kind of go back to that because I think it's important to understand what you bring to the table. Confidence comes from understanding where you're at, completing things, building a project and completing it, knowing your worth. And you do that through education, you do that through volunteer work, you do that through your experiences in life, through your work. And so you got to bring all that to the table and remember that you have value when you go to this interview. Right. Kristen, I think this is the next. Oh, no, this is still me.
Can I add one thing on
Please.
to the last topic? I'm assuming a lot of our attendees are maybe currently on the job market or close to being on the job market, which is why you're digging around on our ACDS website. But I want to encourage you to not just wait until you are ready to interview, to start writing down all of those experiences. So as you're just, day to day doing your job, like Jenny said, you're probably doing a lot of things that aren't in a job description. So write that stuff down. I remember doing that, kind of making a list of projects I completed when I first started my career. And I'm so glad that I did, because I tell you what, looking back now, I never would have remembered the stuff that I did. So kind of keep your little, I've heard people call it like their kudos folder, or just kind of your cheat sheet of all of the great projects and things that you've helped with or accomplished, kind of those big accomplishments, those moments where you just feel really proud about something that you've gotten done. encourage you to keep that list going for sure. And then when you are ready to interview, you've already got it ready to go.
Absolutely. I keep it in my resume folder
There
for
you go.
myself. I have a folder, I have like a master resume that's probably 25 pages long, but I don't use that. I don't send that. But I've got a lot of experience and a life experience, and so everything's on it. And then I pick and choose when I go to the job when I see a job and I'm like, oh, I really want to go do that. So what applies? Where do I get this experience from? How can I show this company I relate to this position? And that's why I use my master resume file. So keep one of those, or whatever you want to call it. But definitely, to Kristen's point, it's important to continue to add to that folder. Every day you learn something. Every week or every year, you're gaining experience. Make sure you think about that. Maybe at your New Year's resolution, you sit down and think about, what did I accomplish this year, and make sure you add it to that folder. Right. I think I said prepare, prepare, prepare too many times, but it's so true. When Chris and I built this webinar, and I spent a couple of weeks going over different webinars and different information, and I gathered information from a ton of resources of people that I value, and we brought it together. We prepared. Same thing you're going to do when you're applying for a job. Prepare for it. Make sure that your resume is a match. And when you go into that interview, be prepared by knowing, okay, on that job resume or on that job posting, it said, I need to have 2 to 3 years of experience in this area. Make sure you have 2 to 3 questions prepared with answers, and what might they ask me? Well, if you're applying for a data analyst role, they might ask you some questions about your experience in that area. They might ask you some questions about, the knowledge that you gain and how do you gain it. Think about what they might ask and be prepared, and try to keep that list with you. I always carry a notepad with me. Again, I'm the little nerd that had the notepad. But do keep those experiences with you so that you have something to reference back when you're in that interview. It's a-okay. They expect that you're going to have some questions at the end. They're going to ask you about that. So if you have a notepad and you have a little cheat sheet in there, they're not going to know the difference. Read that job description. So important. Make sure you understand. Pick out key things that you know are in that job description that you really relate to. Make sure that you connect with those. Now, what questions do you think they might ask? What experiences and skills that you have previously that relate to this? Think about those behavioral questions. We have a ton that we can send you if you're like, what might they ask me? Do I want to prepare for them? We will send you that link so that you can have all those questions to practice. Practice with us. We're here for you to help do that as well. But make sure you write down your answers. Make sure that you'll have key things that will help you remember statistical data, or, any detail that might be important for you in the questions. Set the stage. Frame your answers by showcasing your skills and experience matching the job description. Those nice to have skills that are on the post, if you have relatable skills to that, make sure that you talk about that. Have 2 to 3 different experiences that you can speak to. And again, keep that notebook handy with reminders. I think it's important. Kristen, is there anything on here that I missed?
I don't think so. I love that idea of kind of put yourself in the shoes of the interviewer. If you knew that you needed to find someone to fit that job description that you're looking at, the job description is kind of your cheat sheet. So use that. And if you knew you were looking for someone who had those skills, what questions would you be asking that candidate? And practice those yourself. See if you can answer those questions that you would come up with if you were looking for that person. Like Jenny said, I think the skills are important. Thinking through, like, She said experiences that you have. I'm so bad at coming up with stories on the spot. So again, use your cheat sheet, use that job description to say, well, they need someone with Excel skills, for example. Well, here's the few times I've used Excel. One time I used it to do this, another time I used it to do this. So now you kind of have a database, no pun intended with Excel joke. You have a database of potential answers for the interview questions that they may ask you. But that job description is gold. It will prep you the best, one of the best tools. I won't say it's the only one, but it's one of the best tools to prep you for an interview. All right, guys, so we're still talking about preparing, right? There's a lot of different ways that we can prepare. After you read that job description, another good way to prep is to have some questions yourself. So I think we all know that the last question you get at the end of every interview is, what questions do you have for me? And this is an important one. As someone who has interviewed hundreds of people, they kind of start to blend together after a while. Even if you just have one opening, right, and the interviewer is talking to 4, 5, 10 different people for a role, sometimes you'll get people mixed up. So this is an opportunity. The questions that you ask is kind of your chance to be a little different, to ask a really hard question, to ask a really insightful question. A lot of times, and in most jobs, especially IT, you're being hired for your brain, right? Or else they'd have a robot do the job. And in some cases they do, right? Manufacturing, we're starting to have robots drive cars these days. But you are being hired for your brain. And so you want to use that brain to show how you are interested in this job. You've done some research at this job or for this job. You're interested in the role, and this is your chance to do that. So we recommend having 2 or 3 questions. I'll be honest, a lot of times interviewers don't save a whole lot of time for questions at the end. So maybe you'll have 5 or 10 minutes. You might get a little bit more than that. I've even heard some interviewers asking for your questions at the top of the interview. And so you could literally spend the whole interview just asking your questions, which I would be really impressed with. If somebody had a whole interview's worth of questions for me, I'd probably want to hire them. But a couple of the topics that we've heard some really good questions about are questions about the company. So asking how the company's evolved over the years. What's the culture like? Those company level questions, right? Don't ask what the company does. You should be able to figure that one out from some research, right? So you don't want to ask questions that you can pretty easily get the answer to. Maybe you ask what their largest current initiative is right now, or the biggest problem they're trying to solve as a company is. Maybe you ask a question about the specific job role. So, hey, if the person you're talking to might be your manager, you can ask about their expectations. What are you expecting to see from me at 30 days, 6 months, 1 year? The other cool thing about those kinds of questions is you're playing this like psychological trick with the interviewer, and you're putting yourself in the role in their mind. So now it's going to be even harder for them to like unpicture you doing the job. So I really like questions like that, where you're putting yourself in the job already and asking what things would be like if you were there. A lot of people like to ask about the technologies. We're talking about IT jobs after all, right? So the technologies are important, whether these are programming languages, whether they are specific databases. If it's a data analytics role, you might want to know what database they use, if it's DB2 or SQL Server or MySQL. You may want to ask about the hardware. Do they use Cisco stuff? Do they use Windows? What phone system they use, anything like that, to kind of get some specifics. That also will show some good technical aptitude, asking those kinds of questions. And then another one that we like is about advancement. I hear a lot of people say, that they want to ask about what roles, where I could go from here, what roles there are. And I like that concept, but we'll strengthen it a little bit by asking the interviewer to prove where people have gone, right? So don't just say, hey, what could I do next? Because they could give you any song and dance, right? So instead, ask them to prove to you where people who have started in this role have moved on to within the organization, right? Who was the last person promoted from your team and where did they go? Now you know that it's been a career path that's happened before, so it's easier for you to potentially follow that path. I can talk about questions for days, and the internet has a lot of great ones. So there's just a few to get your mind spinning. But like Jenny said, on your cheat sheet on your notes, be sure to have a couple of good ones ready.
Awesome.
Oh, I think this one's me too. All right. So we know the last question of an interview is, what questions do you have for me? What's always the very first question in an interview? Jenny, you know what it is.
I do. Tell me about yourself.
Tell me about yourself. And y'all don't freak out about this question. It's so open-ended. I think that's why a lot of us are like, well, what do you want to know? Because there are so many things we can tell you. So here's our formula a little bit and some tips and tricks. I always say people hire people. Again, if a robot can do it, they'd probably buy a robot to do it, right? And there's also a reason that we still interview. If somebody only cared about your skills, they would give you an assessment and never even have a conversation with you, right? But we don't do that. We still interview. And that's because you're working with these people all day, every day. You got to motivate them. You got to be there together on the really good days and celebrate. And you got to be together on the really tough days and buckle down and get through it together. So they want to get to know you as a person. And I say that because we don't want you sounding like a robot in your answer to this. Again, none of us are robots here. Even if we program computers, we're still not robots. So we want you to tell your story. Sound like a real person and kind of share your journey. You know, what you did for work, where you went to school. Tell your whys. Why did you do all of these things? You don't just want to regurgitate your resume. They probably have it. They can read it. So you don't just want to kind of, read from top to bottom your resume, but make it a story. I've heard one of our recruiters, give Amanda a shout out if she's here. I've seen that she kind of talked about this past, present, and future method. So tell me what you did in your past, where you went to school, where you worked. Tell me what you're doing right now. Are you going through some training to be a career changer? You're looking at something new. So you're in this cool Google course, learning how to do some analytics, IT help desk. And then what do you want to do in your future? What are you looking for? Looking to get your career started or advance your career in this particular area, or move into this industry, or you're moving to this area, to this location. You're new to Northwest Arkansas. So your future goal is to land an IT job there. Another little formula is kind of that who, what, why, how. So share who you are. And it's okay to get a little personal. You don't need to give everybody all your business. We're not right here reading a biography.
Please don't.
But we are humans after all. So we have families and pets and lives and interests. So don't be afraid to be a person. And what are your values? What are the things that you know that you care about, the things that you're looking for on a job search for a reason, right? They call it a search. So you're looking for something. Why are you interested? There's a reason you decided to apply to that job with that company. What is it that interested you about them? This also makes the interviewer feel good. Anytime you can make somebody feel good, they're going to want you to stick around because people like to feel good. And then the how here is how you can make a difference. So this is showcasing the skills that you already have, the training that you're currently doing, right? Those things that you're learning, those transferable skills that you already know that can be applied. And then the one question I always get is, how long am I supposed to talk? And I don't know if this is a real thing, but we're going to call it the Goldilocks rule, right? We don't want our answers to be too long. Y'all, I have had someone who I asked, it was a 30-minute phone interview, and I said, hey, can you tell me about 20 minutes later?
Yeah.
So that would be the definition of too long. Okay. And then we also don't want to be too short. You want to talk more than like 30 seconds, right? You want to give them a little something to kind of talk about next, to relate to in your answer. So somewhere in the middle, we're Goldilocks, and be happy with that kind of perfect length of an answer.
I so think that's important too. I'm the worst, and I'm a recruiter. I know this, but when I interview, I'm too short. I'm Jenny, mother, wife. So yeah, do add to that. Remember, there also holds value in there when you're speaking to it. That's a great place to talk about, well, I'm passionate about helping others, or I'm passionate about getting dogs off the street. And so I've been working with Paws and Claws, and one of the things I do for them is I keep their website up to date. Like, it's a great time to, also add in a little bit of, a little sprinkle of why you're a good fit for this job. All right, let me see if I can click without clicking. Too many. Right. What does an employer look for, Kristen?
Well, we already know they're looking for what's on the job description, but
That's
not
true.
just about that job description. So we talk a lot about transferable skills. We all have them, whether or not you've even worked before. You have some skills. I don't know if there are any Napoleon Dynamite fans out there. His nunchuck skills and some of those skills with that makes me think of. But maybe you have some examples or stories of times where you've been adaptable. I think of an example almost day after day where we have, Jenny was adaptable earlier, having to reset our our presentation, right? Even little stories like that where things don't always go the way that you plan it. You, like the football players say, overcame some adversity and adapted. Maybe sometime when you were coachable. Hopefully we have all, I'm sure made some mistakes and learned from them. Again, none of us are perfect. Problem solving is a skill, especially in IT, that is sought after. We talked to some people who have maybe gone to college or some training, we've got associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or maybe we started school and haven't finished. One of the biggest things I think we learn, whether or not we have a specific degree or a piece of paper, is we learn how to learn. We learn how to problem solve. So problem solving, especially again in the IT space, is something that you can probably find an example in your life of how you've done that. Maybe outside of work, in your home or in a church or in a social group, you have been a leader, you have been a motivator, especially if you're a parent. I know you have been a motivator because my parents had to motivate me to get out of my bed every morning growing up. And then on the flip side of that, maybe you're a self-starter. Maybe you jump out of bed every day. Or your boss never has to ask you to do something because you've already done it when they ask for it. So think about those skills that are applicable again in your existing work, home, in community events or clubs. Those are a lot of the things that employers are looking for, and often they ask for these through those behavioral questions that Jenny mentioned. So those are those questions like, hey, Michelle, tell me about a time when you had to solve a problem, just kind of an open-ended question like that. And then you can tell any story about anything that you can think of. So my recommendation on those is, again, to come up with a couple of stories to be able to reference back to.
I love that idea of having stories to follow back up on. I think that, in an interview, we can get so nervous and so excited about the interview that it's easy to forget, like, oh my gosh, how many times have you gotten out of an interview and went, I didn't tell them the most important thing I wanted to tell them? If you have a little cheat sheet might help, but, practice also helps. But writing it down a couple times before, really speaking to it beforehand might help you as well. The power of persuasion. Remember, they invited you to this interview. You didn't invite yourself. You did take the first step by matching the job description and reading through it, making sure your resume was ready. But they reviewed that and said, yeah, I want to know more. I want to know more about Kristen, right? So remember that. Keep that in your wheelhouse. That's part of something that will help you. Your focus is to show them why they want to take that next step. Why do you want to go forward with me? Why am I special? Where's my special sauce that you want that's different from everybody else that's out there? What is that? How does it apply to this position? And how can you sprinkle in all of the other experiences that you have? Be prepared. Know who your audience is. Make sure your responses are prepared and and applicable to why you're the best fit. If it's not applicable, for instance, I was a Red Cross first aid trainer. It didn't apply to my position, so I didn't need to talk about it. But if I had kept the data and organized the data and cleaned the data to present to the Red Cross organization, that might be applicable. So just think about those different volunteer things that you've done. Feel comfortable because you are prepared. You've taken that step to evaluate and understand who you are, and what those next steps look like.
All right. So, Jenny, you kind of mentioned this earlier. We want to keep our focus kind of in this frame of what that interviewer is really the most curious about. If you can't tell, Jenny and I like to talk, and like she said earlier, we can talk to anybody about anything, probably a brick wall, right? They don't just want to listen to you talk. They want to make sure that what you're saying is relevant to what they actually need. This kind of comes into that persuasion a little bit too, right? In order to persuade them that you are the best fit for this job, you want to make sure any opportunity you can take to give an answer that is relevant to the role, relevant to the company, relevant to the skills, that you're taking that opportunity and sharing it. So a couple of chances to do this. We talked about that. Tell me about yourself, introduction, right? If you know that, like Jenny said, that they're looking for someone with some data skills, that in your introduction, maybe you share a little bit about a time when you got to use those data skills. Or if you get a behavioral question, we kind of mentioned this already, but having a couple of stories, examples that will relate back to what those guys are looking for. Maybe this is about the industry. If you're interviewing for a job in the healthcare industry and you worked in a hospital, taking calls in a call center at a hospital, or for a healthcare company, healthcare insurance company, hey, now you've got some relevant experience because that's related, that healthcare knowledge. I don't know anything about healthcare until I'm diagnosed with something. But if you've got some healthcare experience, there's kind of something to latch on to. Again, we went back to those skills. So any skills that you have, whether it's the hard skills or the soft skills. Something we hear from a lot of our employers, even in IT jobs, is that they're looking for that kind of the people fit. So what we mean by that is the person who can communicate, the person who is comfortable, the person who knows how to prioritize 2 different help desk tickets and knows, oh, the CEO of the company has an issue, and the bank teller has an issue. Which issue am I going to prioritize? So some of those general people skills, the student skills, maybe as opposed to the book smarts, that you've got to. And then we talked about those questions as well. This is a great opportunity to frame that interview. The questions you ask, you want to be relevant to the company, to the role, to the job. You don't want to ask them like, hey, do y'all have free breakfast here, right? Or, hey, can you tell me, I don't know, right, about your Christmas celebrations with the company. You want it to be as relevant to the job, to the duties as it can be.
All right. Top tips. I think that these kind of go over the same things we just talked about, but I think they're important, they're relevant. Instead of thinking about this as an interview, this is a meeting. This is somebody you're going to work with for a long time, hopefully, right? So the first time I met Ashley, well, I actually met her before, but the first time I interviewed with Ashley and Kristen, that was I had to think about it as a meeting. Do I want to work with these people the rest of my life? Because this is the job I want for the rest of my life. So do I want to work with them? Think about it as a meeting, as a greeting, not as an interview. I think sometimes that helps deflate that nervousness when you think about it in that way. Understand what they want. They're coming to you. They chose you for this interview. On your resume, you have skills and experiences that they felt were valuable. So understand they came to you, and what they want from you is how you're going to be that special sauce for this job. Reread that job description before you go in case there's something else you want to, you know, bring to the table that you didn't think about in the beginning. You know, how did this apply, or how did that apply? What can I do to share with them about this? Or maybe you learned some new skills from the time you applied to the time that you are interviewing. Spend time researching that company. Like Kristen said earlier, it's so important. Don't come to the table and ask them about something you can look up online. Spend 5 or 10 minutes. You know, look up their initiatives. What are their missions? What have they been doing recently? Do you want to be part of that? That's part of it too. You know, they're interviewing you, but you are also interviewing them. Is this a position you want to be in for the long haul? You know, think about it in that manner where, you know, ask when you're thinking about what questions to ask. Dress for success, so important. Don't come to the table in sweats and, you know, a t-shirt. You know, dress the part.
Can I add one thing in on this?
You
As
bet.
as video interviews have become more popular, don't forget about dressing your background either. So you don't want to be like slumped on a couch in the corner or slouched in your chair. We've heard that feedback from some of our hiring managers. So dressing may not just be about what you look like, but that whole frame around you these days.
Absolutely. No laundry in the background. Prepare your answers, also your 2 to 3 questions for your interview. Go ahead and have those ready. You know, if you use your phone for notes, you know, that's fine. Or if you use a note paper and take it with you, that's fine. Make sure you have something with you so that, you know, you're prepared. It'll help you be calm because you already know what kind of questions to ask or what, you know, how to answer. The other thing is that if they do answer all your questions before they at the end and you get to the end, you're like, oh, the 3 questions I had prepared, they answered. You know, be prepared for that. I cannot tell you how many times that has happened to me. Make sure that you have another area that you can ask some questions, a couple little reminders of things that you might have thought of. So, you know, just be prepared. Be positive. You know, before you go to your interview, turn on some good music, some good jams, you know, dance it out, whatever helps you be in that good frame of mind before you go to your interview, do it. You know,
Power pose.
yeah,
There's a good TED talk on just power posing like Superman and and feeling that confidence.
absolutely. So important. You know, I mean, we're all human and we all have value, and it's hard for us sometimes to realize what our value is. It's easy for me to go, oh, Kristen and Ashley and Katie and Amanda, they all bring these things to the table. I can see them, but I don't often look internally and go, what do I bring to the table? So think about that and value yourself and bring those things to the table, and don't criticize. So when you are sitting down and doing this, don't remember no don'ts, no no's, no don'ts, only do's. I do this. I have done that. I'm good at this. Keep those things in mind. Maintain eye contact. I have interviewed a couple people in my lifetime that refused to look up. They looked down. It was so uncomfortable. And once I got them to look up and I made eye contact, they became more comfortable. Believe it or not, that will help you become more comfortable. So maintain that eye. I mean, don't stare them down, but at the same time, you know, look for the kindness in their eyes. We all have that. You know, just take a minute. Practice that mock interview. That's what we do. Kristen and I, Amanda, Katie, Ashley, we all do this, and we all have a little, you know, different twist on what we believe is important and how but it's practice, and practice makes perfect.
You can
Have a
also, if you want to practice with a family member or a friend who
uh-huh.
loves you just enough to give you some of those positives, but also give you some good constructive feedback. Or I saw a cool video about this. A guy who teaches people how to speak said to record yourself. And the first time, if I can remember one second, first time he said play it back without the audio and only watch yourself and watch your body language and your eye contact, and do you seem open or are you closed off, right? The second time, only listen to it, only listen to the audio. And And again, listen, are you answering the right questions? Are you talking too much? Giving enough of an answer? Are you going on and on and on? Do you need to take a breath like I do sometimes? That's the thing I know I need to work on, right? And then the third time, watch it all together. And every time, take a couple of little notes. And you'll be surprised. I thought that was a really cool tip about what you'll pick up kind of by eliminating that audio and video in a couple of those cases. So no excuses. Even if you don't want to practice with us, you can for sure practice on your own as well.
I love that tip. Love that tip. I think I'll have to keep that in my hat to remind people. Have a strategy in place for the question that you don't have an answer to. But honestly, I don't have answers to everything. Sometimes I have to say, I don't know. But this is what I've seen done. This is what I would do. This is where I would go research. This is what I would want to do or think I would do, so that you would have an idea. Give them something. Don't just say, I don't know. Maybe come with it. Well, this is what I think I would do. I've seen this done somewhere else. Keep those things in mind.
You don't want to lie either. So don't tell them that's not a strategy for answering those questions. You don't want to lie. So yes, like I ditto what Jenny said. You want to be honest, but it's okay to be honest and say, that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe specifically if they ask you about your experience with a certain technology, you could elaborate and say, I don't know that. Can you tell me what it's used for? And maybe I've got a similar experience I can tell you about. Something like that. Showcasing that confidence all the way through and then relying on those transferable skills, right? Those skills that you do have. But you don't want to lie because interviewers can usually see right through that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. This is my favorite time. This is the time when you get to ask us questions. And, we're here. The whole team, I think, is here. So please feel free to ask some questions. We're going to open it up on the floor. I see we've got some people from Arkansas and Little Rock. And Jacksonville and Arkansas here attending. All right. Hey, Chris, I see you coming on camera. You got a question for us?
Hi, thank you guys for the presentation today. And the question that I've got is, I've grew up in Arkansas, but moved out the state and have come back after 30 some odd years almost. And so most of my experience is outside of the state. And also, I actually have an interview this Friday. And the position is a little bit less than what I've done in the past. Like I've been the operations manager, director of an IT department, and the position is actually an IT acquisitions position. So I kind of one other caveat to all that is that over the 30 years, I've been in a lot of different companies, a lot of different projects. So I think one of the big objections that some people might have is, is this guy going to stay around? But at the same time, I think one of the advantages of that is I have a lot of really broad experience to draw from. Mm-hmm. Are there any suggestions that you guys might have as far as kind of how to tailor, all of that into the specifics of the particular job, my situation? I mean, I know you guys don't know the details, but just kind of that situation.
I think probably both of us may have a different perspective. I have a different perspective because I've kind of been in that same role. I was an operations manager in the aviation industry till 9/11. And then I switched careers, believe it or not, into recruiting, which I've loved, and I've been there since then. And I've gotten to a spot in my life where, things are different for me. And so when I started looking for the job I wanted to finish my career in, I wanted it to be something that fit me. And so maybe the pay was different. Maybe the title was different. Maybe I don't care about a title anymore. Maybe I cared more about how I applied my skills to help others. So for me, it was about finding that special sauce, if you will, that would help me be in this position. Now, if you're not sure that that's going to be for your forever place, that would be something you would want to think about. But if you're like, this is the job I want to be in for my ever place, then think about why you want it to be your forever place and what skills and things that are going to be a benefit to them and a plus, because it's not a bad thing to have too many skills. The cool thing about that is that they're getting a deal because you
Yeah.
do bring 30 years of experience to the table, and that's a plus for them. And if they're afraid of the money, then that's a piece you might have to talk to them about, like what would be their fear in you leaving? Is it because you want more money somewhere else or more experience or a top title, or what would be that fear for them? And make sure you address that fear if this is the right spot for you for your ever spot. Kristen, what
Gotcha.
would be your take?
Yeah, so I'm taking my notes down so I don't forget them. But I had two thoughts. First of all, welcome back to
Yes.
Arkansas.
Thank you.
I guess I
Yeah.
can't even really say that because I'm not in Arkansas myself, but I will be back in a few months too. And I am ready to be back myself. But my two thoughts are really kind of centered around telling them. So tell them what you want to tell them, right? The first would be let them know, maybe in an introduction, hey, I am back in Arkansas and I'm looking to stay here. I'm ready to find, somewhere that I can pick my career up and retire if that's what you're looking for. But kind of don't
Mhm.
even let that question come to their mind. Almost squash it beforehand. And
Okay.
then my second thought would be encourage them about the job specifically, right? So maybe you can say something about this role that you were attracted to was that it would leverage your experience doing this, or that it gets you doing this that you're looking forward to doing again, or something. So again, making them feel special a little bit about here's that thing that you've got that I'm looking for to help ease any concerns from that end, and then just letting them know for sure, yes, I'm planning on being here. This is what I'm looking for right now.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope that helps. Good luck with your interview. We'd love to hear how it goes. If
Yeah.
follow back up and tell us.
Will do.
Awesome. Hey, Krista, we have another question that says, how do you bring up salary in an interview if it's not posted on the job description, or is this a no-no?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Is this Miss?
Hey, it is. I am at the desk and don't have access to a camera, but I am able to talk. But I did post that question because
Awesome.
there have been situations where the salary hasn't been posted, and it can be important.
Yeah.
But how do you bring that up? Because to me, it's always uncomfortable. Because I don't want them to think, okay, she's more worried about the salary versus the job. But how can you bring that up in a way where it's not, I guess you would say, offensive
Mm-hmm.
um, to the interviewer?
Yeah. Jimmy, you want me to go first on this
Yeah,
one?
sure.
Okay. I agree with you. Money is kind of one of those like weird things to talk about. So I think everyone has their own approach. Some people are very straight to the point, right?
Mhm.
Some people skirt around it.
See.
And my thoughts, if they don't post it in the job description, that tells me that they might be a company that is a little bit more reserved about it. And that's okay. Some companies are like that. That's, at least for me, that's not a bad thing. I would definitely ask it as a question. I would not have it be the very first question that I ask. And if I were interested in the job, I would still apply and maybe kind of would read the room a little bit, I think. Depending on how the first interview goes, I would maybe ask what the rest of the interview process is like. And they may already tell you when they're going to tell you, right? They may say, we're going to do a video interview or an in-person interview, and then we'll make job offers or whatever. But I would almost make it like, hey, can you tell me about the rest of the interview process? and then see where they go. And then maybe a follow-up is, can you tell me a little bit more about the salary range for this position? I would ask it as a range. I wouldn't say, hey, what you paying? Right? I would say, hey, can you tell me what your expected salary range is for this position? I want to make sure that it aligns with what I'm looking for before we get too far in the process. That shows that you're being respectful of their time and your time, but also saying, hey, I've got a number, right? We're all humans, especially in today's economy. We've got to be sure it's the right thing for us. So I think kind of a little bit of that, figuring out when the right place to ask it, if the right place is after a first interview, at the end, or maybe it's not until the end of the second interview, depending on how much time, how interested you are, and how much time you're able and willing to spend in the process before you get that answer. If you are like, well, I'm not going to be able to take off work or, work my schedule for a second interview until I know for sure that it's a certain number, then you may want to prioritize asking that sooner. But, a lot of times employers will ask you that question too. But if you're in a first interview and you've gotten to the end and you still don't know, that would be my approach. Jenny, anything else?
100% agree. I'm not likely to go to a second interview if I don't know in the first interview, because I'm also interviewing them.
That's right.
So I need to know the range. I think it's twofold. I think that you bring a lot of skills and experiences to the table, and it's okay. Now, they may ask you, what is that range? And I think the range is okay. I mean, that gives you an idea. Okay, I can continue on because at the bottom end of this range, or I'm in the middle of this range, but I know that I can afford to go on. But if it's 40,000 and I can't pay my bills for less than 50, then there's no sense in wasting their time or your time. And time is valuable for you and for the interviewers. So I think, in my opinion, is that very first interview to clear that up before we go to the second interview. Anybody else on our TA team want to jump in and tell us your opinion on that? They may be busy. Oh, there you go.
I think y'all hit it. I would say, remember, if often on an application you put your salary expectation in a range. Most HR companies won't give you the full range, so don't get upset if they push back with unfortunately our HR guidelines prevent us from sharing that. And as the lady said, what is your salary expectation? And do a wide range, nothing too crazy, and ask if that is within their budget. I think that's a good strategy as well. But no, I think we kind of covered all areas, and I think also recruiters are very numb to the salary question. So
it's just part of our job. We just talk about it.
Every call we are talking about money and budget and ranges, and sometimes those ranges do change, and so don't feel that it is something not to bring up, but be ready to share your salary expectation, because most recruiters will instead of answering, put the question back to you.
And I'll say that's a good point on the application asking for it. Actually, usually if the application asks for it and they know it, if you share it, they're not going to set up an interview if it's not going to match what they know that they can afford, right? So if they've asked for it, it makes the conversation a little bit easier to start talking about, especially since they started it. But you know that you're probably in a good space.
Absolutely.
Good question.
Okay, thank you. All great and helpful tips, because I just hate to bring it up. I'm just that type of person, and I'm just hoping someone says something up front before I have to bring it up. But I was just wondering if it was okay to bring it up in
Well,
the interview. So
think about it in this tone too. Like Ashley had said, if you answered that question on the application, they value you at that range that you put on the application, and so you're fitting in their range, or they wouldn't call you.
Mm-hmm. And I like the strategy, team. I hope that they're going to bring it up, but if not, and it's important to you, you bring it up because nobody's going to fight for it like you are.
Right. And I like what I think Jenny said is you're also interviewing them. So I'm going to keep that in mind, that I'm important as well.
Absolutely.
And my value and my worth is important. So I'm going to
Indeed.
bring it up. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. All right, maybe we got a couple minutes left for our last one. Jenny and Hannah, if you want to elaborate on what you mean, how and when can you bring up non-compete, like a non-compete agreement that you maybe already have signed, or like if they're going to ask you to sign a non-compete? If you want to unmute, if you can, feel free to jump in. But Jenny, any knowledge or
Well,
non-compete?
I think, yeah, just a little bit I have, and Ashley, feel free to help jump in on this, but it depends on in which manner she's thinking of for the non-competes. But if you have a non-compete that says that you have to, not work in this environment for the next 2 years, and you're going to another employer that's the competitor, then I think that's almost an attorney, question.
We are not allowed to give any type of legal advice.
Legal advice.
Consultant executive scientist. I will tell you from my experience, I did sales recruiting within telecommunications and would take things to my legal team, and they were never worried about it, to where even though, yes, legally it is a contractual agreement and there, you still should do your due diligence. For some reason, the cost to fight it was never worth the benefit. However, that was one company's situation. So I would probably maybe wait after a second interview, or maybe, get them to want you first. And then, and on your end, ensure that you're interested in them, and then disclose it. I feel like it was usually at the time of a job offer,
Yeah.
and someone would share it with me. So maybe that's the better timing to not scare them off.
And I would recommend using the interview process to confirm whether or not it would even, hit the non-compete. Maybe that's your chance to find out, oh, is this really a competitor? Is it the industry or the nature of the work or whatever? Because you may find out, a job description might say one thing, but when you really find out what the work is, it might not actually violate a non-compete either. That's a good one. That helps.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Well, I guess that's going to bring us to an end. So all of our contact info is on the screen, and we will be in touch via email with everybody to send you a recording. And so you'll have our information. Thank you again for spending some time with us, your lunch hour. And we hope everybody has a great rest of the week. And again, we are here anytime to help you on your job search. Please join us for any future events, and we'll see everybody hopefully soon online. Thanks again. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Make it a good one.